Christmas has always been my least favorite time of year. Not because I'm some kind of Scrooge. I actually like the idea of family, warmth, and togetherness. No, I hate Christmas because it's when people show their true colors, when the masks slip and you see who's really underneath all that holiday cheer. My name is Soren Valden, and I'm about to tell you how my wife handed me the best Christmas gift I never knew I wanted. My freedom. It started on December 23rd, a Tuesday that felt more like a Monday in hell. I was sitting in my home office, debugging code for a client's e-commerce platform, because apparently even during the holidays, people need their websites to work, when Zoya walked in wearing that particular expression I'd learned to dread over our 5 years of marriage. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms and leaning against the doorframe like she owned the place, which, technically, she did. Her name was on the lease. I saved my work and turned around in my chair, taking in the sight of my wife. Zoya was beautiful in that carefully constructed way that takes 2 hours and $300 worth of products to achieve. Auburn hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless despite it being barely noon, wearing a designer sweater that probably cost more than most people's rent. "What's up?" I asked, though I already knew this wasn't going to be good. Zoya only used that tone when she was about to drop a bomb. "I've been thinking about Christmas," she said, examining her manicured nails with the kind of attention most people reserve for important documents. "Okay, what about Christmas?" "Well, Kai called yesterday." And there it was. Kai Dornell, her ex-boyfriend from college. The guy she claimed was just a friend, but who somehow managed to pop up in our lives whenever things got complicated. Kai was one of those guys who peaked in college and spent the rest of his life trying to recapture that glory, pseudo-alpha male, minor local celebrity because he owned a few fitness studios, and the kind of smug that only comes from never having been properly humbled. "What did Kai want?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Zoya straightened up, and I could see her shifting into what I privately called her boardroom mode, the persona she used when she was about to negotiate something she wanted. "He invited me to spend Christmas with him and his family at their cabin in Vermont. It's a tradition we used to have and—" "Wait," I interrupted. "You mean he invited us?" The pause that followed was about 3 seconds too long. "Actually, no, just me. His family doesn't really know you that well, and it would be awkward." "Awkward?" I repeated the word like I was tasting something unpleasant. "Soren, don't be dramatic. It's just a few days. You can spend Christmas with your brother or something." I leaned back in my chair, studying my wife's face. There was something else here, something she wasn't saying. Zoya was many things, but subtle wasn't one of them. When she wanted something, she usually went for it directly. This dancing around the subject meant she knew what she was asking for was wrong. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You want to spend Christmas, our first Christmas in our new place, I might add, with your ex-boyfriend and his family. And you want me to just— what, exactly?" "I want you to be understanding. Kai and I have history." "Yeah, I'm aware of your history. And this is important to me. His family has always been like a second family to me, and I miss that connection." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighborhood. Edgewater Heights was one of those suburbs that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd seen too many Christmas movies. Perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, the kind of place where people competed over holiday decorations and gossiped about property values. "What does Kai think about this arrangement?" I asked. "What do you mean? I mean, does he know you're married? Does his family know you're married? Or are you planning to spend Christmas playing house with your ex while your actual husband sits at home eating takeout?" Zoya's reflection in the window showed her rolling her eyes. "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" I turned around to face her, and that's when I saw it. The look I'd been dreading for months. It was the expression of someone who'd already made up their mind and was just going through the motions of pretending to care about my opinion. "Soren," she said, and her voice had shifted into what I called her explaining things to idiots tone. I'm going to Vermont for Christmas. You can either be supportive of that or you can make this difficult, but I'm going either way. The room went quiet except for the humming of my computer and the distant sound of someone's leaf blower outside. I could feel something shifting inside me, like tectonic plates rearranging themselves. Is that an ultimatum? I asked. Zoya shrugged, and that casual gesture told me everything I needed to know. Call it whatever you want. I'm just being honest about what's going to happen. And if I'm not okay with my wife spending Christmas with her ex-boyfriend, then maybe you should think about whether this marriage is working for you. There it was. The thing that had been lurking underneath all our conversations for the past year finally dragged into the light. Zoya didn't just want to spend Christmas with Kai, she wanted out of our marriage, and she was too much of a coward to say it directly. I walked back to my desk and sat down, pulling out my phone. What are you doing? Zoya asked. Checking something, I said, scrolling through my contacts until I found what I was looking for. Yeah, here it is. Margaret Raleigh, divorce attorney. I saved her number after Tom's divorce last year. Good rates, very efficient. Zoya's confident expression flickered. Soren, no, this is perfect, I said, standing up again. You've just made everything crystal clear. You want to spend Christmas with Kai? Go ahead. You think our marriage isn't working? Let's fix that problem right now. I hit the call button and put the phone to my ear. Margaret's office answered on the second ring. Raleigh Family Law, this is Jessica. Hi Jessica, this is Soren Valden. I need to schedule an emergency consultation with Margaret. Today, if possible. Of course, Mr. Valden. We have an opening at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Perfect. I'll take it. I hung up and looked at Zoya, who was staring at me like I'd just started speaking in tongues. What are you doing? She asked, and for the first time since she'd walked into my office, she sounded uncertain. I'm being understanding, I said. You want to spend Christmas with Kai? Done. You think our marriage isn't working? Also done. I'll file the papers today, split our accounts by tomorrow, and you can spend Christmas however you want. Single. Zoya's mouth opened and closed a few times before any sound came out. You can't be serious. Why not? You just told me you'd rather be with your ex-boyfriend than your husband. What exactly did you think was going to happen? I thought... She started, then stopped. You thought what? That I'd just sit here and take it? That I'd spend Christmas alone while you played happy family with another man? It's not like that. Then what is it like, Zoya? Explain it to me. She couldn't, of course, because what she'd really thought was that I'd cave, that I'd swallow my pride and let her have her cake and eat it too. She'd gotten used to me being the accommodating husband, the one who bent over backwards to keep the peace. But something had changed in the last few minutes. Maybe it was the casual way she'd delivered her ultimatum, or maybe it was the realization that she'd been planning this conversation, planning to hurt me, and she didn't even have the decency to feel bad about it. I need to get ready for my appointment, I said, walking toward the door. Soren, wait. I stopped and turned back to her. What? You don't have to, we can talk about this. Talk about what? You made your choice. I'm just respecting it. I left her standing in my office and went to our bedroom to change clothes. As I was putting on my good shirt, the one I wore to important meetings, I could hear Zoya on the phone in the living room. Lyra, it's me. Something's happened. Lyra was Zoya's older sister, and unlike Zoya, she had never particularly liked me. Not because I'd done anything to offend her, but because she thought her sister had married beneath her. Lyra was the wild one, the one who'd traveled the world and dated artists and musicians before settling down with a hedge fund manager who was currently serving time for embezzlement. She had opinions about everything and the personality of a particularly aggressive house cat. I finished getting dressed and walked back through the living room. Zoya was still on the phone, but she covered the receiver when she saw me. Where are you going? To see my lawyer, I said. Then probably to the bank. Maybe the phone company to get the utilities transferred. You know, all the boring stuff that comes with dissolving a marriage. Soren, please? Have a great Christmas, Zoya. I hope it's everything you wanted. I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving my wife of 5 years standing in our living room, still holding the phone like it might somehow fix what she'd just broken. Margaret Raleigh's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful divorce attorney. Expensive furniture, law books that looked like they'd actually been read, and the kind of quiet that comes from good soundproofing and even better discretion. Margaret herself was in her 50s, with silver hair and the sort of direct gaze that suggested she'd heard every sob story and every excuse at least twice. She listened to my situation without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad with a fountain pen that probably cost more than my laptop. "So let me make sure I understand," she said when I finished. "Your wife gave you an ultimatum about spending Christmas with her ex-boyfriend, and when you objected, she suggested that maybe your marriage isn't working. That's the short version, yes. And you want to file for divorce today. Is that possible?" Margaret leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Valden, I've been practicing family law for 23 years. In my experience, when someone comes in here talking about ultimatums and ex-boyfriends, they're usually the victim of a much longer pattern of behavior. How long has your wife been making unilateral decisions about your marriage?" I thought about it. Honestly, probably since the beginning, but it's gotten worse in the last year or so. "Any children?" "No." "Shared property?" "The apartment lease is in her name. Most of the furniture is hers. I have my car, my computer equipment, some savings." "Joint accounts?" "Checking and savings, yes. But I can document what I contributed." Margaret made more notes. "This is actually fairly straightforward then. New York is a no-fault divorce state, which means we don't need to prove wrongdoing, just that the marriage is irretrievably broken. Based on what you've told me, I think we can make a strong case for that. How long does it take? If it's uncontested and you can agree on the division of assets, we could have you divorced in 60 to 90 days, faster if your wife is motivated to cooperate." I thought about Zoya's expression when I'd called the lawyer. I think she might be. "Good. Now, let's talk about protecting your interests. I want you to go to the bank today and withdraw half of everything in your joint accounts. Don't touch her individual accounts, but anything joint is fair game. We'll put it in a new account in your name only." "Is that legal?" "Perfectly legal. The money in joint accounts belongs to both of you equally. We're just making sure she can't clean them out while you're being reasonable." Margaret handed me a business card for a bank across town. "Ask for David Chen. Tell him I sent you. He'll set you up with accounts and a safe deposit box if you need one." "What about the apartment?" "Since the lease is in her name, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. I'd suggest doing that sooner rather than later. It's easier to negotiate when you're not sleeping in the same bed as the person you're divorcing." I spent the next 2 hours in Margaret's office, going over paperwork and strategy. By the time I left, I had a clear plan and a folder full of documents that would legally end my marriage to Zoya Valden. The bank was my next stop. David Chen turned out to be a friendly guy in his 30s who'd apparently helped a lot of Margaret's clients navigate the financial side of divorce. He set me up with new checking and savings accounts, and we transferred exactly half of everything from my joint accounts with Zoya. "The transfers will show up on her statements tomorrow," David explained. "But by then, the money will already be in your new accounts, so there's nothing she can do about it." "Will she be able to see where it went?" "Not unless she hires a forensic accountant, and even then this is all completely legal. You're just protecting your assets during a divorce proceeding." My phone had been buzzing with texts from Zoya all afternoon, but I'd ignored them. Now, sitting in my car outside the bank, I finally looked at them. "Soren, please call me. We need to talk." "This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. I talked to Lyra and she thinks you're being childish." "Fine. If you want to be dramatic, that's your choice. But don't expect me to beg. I'm going to Vermont tomorrow, whether you file papers or not." The last text had come in 10 minutes ago. "Kai thinks you're pathetic." I stared at that last message for a long moment, then started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so typically Zoya. Even in the middle of our marriage falling apart, she couldn't resist twisting the knife. I called Eddie, my best friend since college, and the one person who'd never particularly liked Zoya. "Soren, what's up, man? My marriage just imploded. Want to grab a drink and watch me become a free man?" "Holy shit. What happened?" I gave him the abbreviated version while I drove toward Murphy's, our usual bar. Eddie listened without interrupting, which was one of the reasons he'd been my best friend for 15 years. "So let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Zoya told you she was spending Christmas with her ex-boyfriend, and when you objected, she basically told you to deal with it or get divorced? That's the gist of it. And you chose option B." "I did." "Dude, I am so proud of you right now." Murphy's was the kind of neighborhood bar that hadn't changed its decor since 1987 and saw no reason to start now. Dark wood, dim lighting, and bartenders who minded their own business. Eddie was already there when I arrived, sitting at our usual table with 2 beers waiting. "Okay," he said as I sat down. "Tell me everything." I went through the whole story again, including the lawyer and the bank. Eddie listened with the expression of someone watching a particularly satisfying movie. "She actually said Kai thinks you're pathetic?" he asked when I showed him the texts. "Apparently." "Man, she really doesn't know you at all, does she?" "What do you mean?" Eddie took a long drink of his beer. "Soren, I've known you since we were 20 years old. You're the guy who spent 3 months learning web design just to build a website for that animal shelter because they couldn't afford to hire someone. You're the guy who drove 6 hours in a snowstorm to help me move out of my ex's apartment. You're loyal, you're patient, and you're generous to a fault." "Okay. But you're also the guy who once spent an entire semester systematically destroying our roommate's social life because he stole your girlfriend. You don't get mad, you get even, and you're really, really good at it." I'd forgotten about that. Junior year, our roommate Derek had started dating my girlfriend behind my back. Instead of confronting him directly, I'd spent 3 months quietly sabotaging every relationship he tried to build. I'd accidentally revealed embarrassing secrets to girls he was interested in, made sure he found out about parties only after they were over, and generally made his life miserable until he finally moved out. "That was different," I said. "We were kids." "No, that was you. The real you. When someone crosses a line you can't uncross." Eddie leaned forward. "Zoya just handed you the biggest insult possible. She told you your marriage means so little to her that she'd rather spend Christmas with another man. And then she had that other man tell you you're pathetic. So I think Zoya and Kai are about to learn what happens when you push Soren Valden too far." I thought about that while I finished my beer. Eddie wasn't wrong. I did have a talent for methodical revenge, but this wasn't college, and Zoya wasn't some roommate I could drive away with pranks. "What are you thinking?" Eddie asked. "I'm thinking that Zoya expects me to either cave and beg her to stay, or sit at home feeling sorry for myself while she plays house with Kai. And instead? Instead, I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for. She wants to be single? She's going to be single. She wants to spend Christmas with Kai? She can spend every Christmas with Kai, because she won't have a husband to worry about anymore. That's not revenge, that's just divorce." I smiled for the first time all day. "Eddie, my friend, you're thinking too small. Divorce is just the beginning." My phone buzzed with another text from Zoya. "Are you seriously not going to answer me?" I showed it to Eddie, who grinned. "What are you going to say?" "Nothing. Radio silence until the papers are served. Let her spend Christmas wondering what I'm planning." "And what are you planning?" "I have no idea yet, but I've got until she gets back from Vermont to figure it out." We spent another hour at Murphy's, with Eddie helping me brainstorm ways to make Zoya's life complicated without actually breaking any laws. By the time I got home, I had the beginnings of a plan. The apartment felt different when I walked in, like a place I was visiting rather than living. Zoya was in the bedroom, packing a suitcase. She looked up when I appeared in the doorway. "There you are. I was starting to think you'd done something stupid." "Like what?" "Like actually filing for divorce over a simple misunderstanding." I leaned against the doorframe, watching her fold expensive clothes into expensive luggage. "Is that what this was? A misunderstanding?" "Soren, I know you're upset." "I'm not upset, Zoya. I'm done." She stopped packing and turned to face me. "What does that mean?" "It means I filed for divorce today. It means I moved our money into separate accounts. It means that by the time you get back from Vermont, you'll be legally single." Zoya stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out if I was bluffing. "You're serious?" "Completely. Over Christmas plans? Over ultimatums? Over threats? Over you telling me that our marriage isn't working because I won't let you spend holidays with your ex-boyfriend?" She sat down on the edge of the bed, and for the first time since this conversation started, she looked uncertain. "I never said I wanted a divorce." "You didn't have to. You made it pretty clear that you'd rather be with Kai than with me. I'm just making that easier for you." "What if I don't go to Vermont?" "Then you don't go to Vermont. But I'm still divorcing you." Zoya's expression shifted from uncertain to angry. "Fine. If that's how you want to play this, then fine. But don't expect me to make it easy for you." "I wouldn't dream of it." She went back to packing, slamming drawers and muttering under her breath. I went to the kitchen and made myself dinner, listening to her stomp around the apartment like an angry teenager. Around 10 o'clock, she dragged her suitcase to the front door. "Kai's picking me up in the morning," she announced. "Have a great trip." "I will." "Good." She stood there for a moment, like she was waiting for me to say something else. When I didn't, she shook her head and went to the guest bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sat in the living room, drinking a beer and thinking about Eddie's words. Zoya and Kai thought they'd won something, that they'd gotten away with humiliating me. They thought I was going to sit here feeling sorry for myself while they had their romantic Christmas getaway. They were wrong. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. Zoya left with Kai at 7 in the morning, and I watched from the kitchen window as she loaded her designer luggage into his ridiculous red sports car. Kai was exactly what you'd expect: designer workout clothes, perfectly styled hair, and the kind of smug expression that comes from thinking you've stolen another man's wife. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. He looked up at the window while Zoya was getting in the car, and I raised my coffee mug in a mock toast. The confusion on his face was worth getting up early for. As soon as they drove away, I got to work. First, I called the utility companies. Since the apartment lease was in Zoya's name, I couldn't cancel the services, but I could remove my name from the accounts and stop paying my share. The electricity, gas, and internet would all be solely her responsibility as of January 1st. "Just to confirm," said the customer service representative at the electric company, "you're removing your name from the account effective December 31st? "That's correct. After that date, all bills and responsibilities go to Zoya Valden only. And you understand that this means you'll no longer have any authority over the account?" "I understand perfectly." Next, I called the cable company and canceled the premium package that I'd been paying for. Zoya would come home to basic cable and no HBO. Then I started on the really fun part. Zoya had always been obsessed with her social media presence. She posted constantly, pictures of her food, her outfits, her spontaneous adventures that were actually carefully staged photo shoots. Her Instagram account was her pride and joy, a curated fantasy of her perfect life. I knew all her passwords because she'd asked me to help her manage her accounts when she was busy with work. She'd never bothered to change them. I didn't hack anything. That would be illegal. But I did start documenting things she'd posted publicly. Screenshots of her flirting with other men in comments. Posts where she complained about being trapped in domestic life. Pictures of her with Kai that were definitely not just friends material. I created a folder on my computer called Evidence and started organizing everything chronologically. If Zoya wanted to play games during the divorce proceedings, I'd be ready. My phone rang around noon. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Is this Soren Valden? Yes. This is Lyra Ventrix, Zoya's sister. We need to talk. Lyra. I'd met her a handful of times over the years, usually at family gatherings, where she'd spent most of her time making snide comments about suburbia and conventional life. She was the artistic one, the rebel, the one who'd married for money and then acted surprised when it didn't work out. What can I do for you, Lyra? You can stop being an idiot for starters. Zoya called me this morning crying about how you filed for divorce. Did she mention why I filed for divorce? She said you had some kind of breakdown because she wanted to spend Christmas with old friends. I laughed out loud. Is that what she told you? That's not what happened? Lyra, your sister gave me an ultimatum. She told me she was spending Christmas with her ex-boyfriend, and if I didn't like it, maybe our marriage wasn't working, so I agreed with her. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. She said it was just a family thing. Did she mention that Kai told her I was pathetic? Because she made sure to pass that message along. Another pause, longer this time. Soren, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you actually planning to go through with this divorce? Absolutely. Even if she comes back and apologizes? I thought about that question. A week ago, the answer might have been different. But something had changed when Zoya delivered her ultimatum. It wasn't just the disrespect. It was the casual cruelty of it, the way she'd been so confident that I'd just take whatever she dished out. Lyra, your sister didn't make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to prioritize another man over her husband, and when I objected, she suggested I should consider divorce. I'm just taking her advice. What if I told you she didn't mean it? Then I'd say she should be more careful with her words. When you tell your husband that maybe your marriage isn't working, you shouldn't be surprised when he starts thinking you might be right. I heard Lyra sigh on the other end of the line. She's going to be furious when she finds out you actually filed papers. I imagine she will be. And you're okay with that? I'm looking forward to it. Another pause, and when Lyra spoke again, her tone was different. Less confrontational, more curious. You know what, Soren? I think I misjudged you. How so? I always thought you were kind of boring. Safe. The kind of guy who'd put up with anything to keep the peace. Maybe I was, but apparently I have limits. Good for you. Zoya needs to learn that actions have consequences. That was unexpected. I thought you were calling to talk me out of this. I was, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that maybe Zoya has been getting away with too much for too long. She's my sister and I love her, but she's also spoiled and selfish and used to getting her way. So you're not going to try to convince me to take her back? Hell no. I'm going to grab some popcorn and watch what happens when she realizes she's not the center of the universe anymore. I found myself actually liking Lyra for the first time since I'd known her. Want to grab coffee sometime? I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting few weeks. I'd like that. And Soren? For what it's worth, I think you're handling this exactly right. After I hung up, I sat back and thought about the conversation. If Lyra, Zoya's own sister, thought I was doing the right thing, then maybe I wasn't crazy. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Alara, Zoya's younger sister. Lyra gave me your number. Can we talk? Alara was the sister I'd barely met. She was in graduate school somewhere, studying something academic and complicated. Zoya had always described her as the smart but weird one, which I was starting to realize probably meant she was the one who saw through Zoya's act. I called the number, and Alara picked up on the first ring. "Soren, thanks for calling. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from Lyra." "Not at all. What's on your mind?" "I wanted to apologize for my sister's behavior, and to tell you that if you need any help with the divorce proceedings, I'm willing to testify about what I've observed over the years." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Zoya has been complaining about you and talking about Kai for months. She's been planning this for a while. The Christmas thing was just her way of forcing a confrontation. That hit me like a punch to the gut." "She's been planning this?" "I think she wanted you to either cave completely, prove that she could walk all over you, or give her an excuse to leave. Either way, she wins. Except I chose option 3. Exactly, and I don't think she saw that coming. I thought about Zoya's expression when I'd called the lawyer. The shock, the confusion, the way she'd tried to backtrack. Ilara was right. Zoya had expected me to either beg her to stay or give her ammunition for a messy divorce. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of watching Zoya hurt people and get away with it, and because I think you deserve better than what she's been giving you." "What has she been saying about me?" "Do you really want to know?" I thought about it. Yes. "She's been telling people that you're boring, that you don't understand her needs, that she feels trapped in a conventional life. She's been painting herself as the victim of a passionless marriage, while texting her ex-boyfriend behind my back." "Exactly. And now she's going to come home expecting either a groveling husband or a messy fight that makes you look like the bad guy. Instead, she's going to find legal papers and an empty apartment. I haven't moved out yet. You should, tonight if possible. Don't be there when she gets back." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know, but anywhere is better than giving her the satisfaction of seeing you in that apartment. Make her wonder where you are and what you're planning." Alara was right. Staying in the apartment would make me look pathetic. The abandoned husband waiting for his wife to come home from her romantic getaway. But if I disappeared, if I made myself unavailable, it would shift the power dynamic. "Ilara, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why don't you and Lyra like your sister very much?" She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Because we've been watching her manipulate people our entire lives. Zoya is beautiful and charming, and she knows how to make people feel special when she wants something from them. But the minute you stop being useful, or the minute you challenge her, she turns into someone else entirely. And you think I'm finally seeing that someone else. I think you're finally standing up to her, and I think it's about time." After I hung up with Alara, I looked around the apartment with new eyes. This wasn't my home. It was Zoya's stage, the place where she performed the role of the perfect wife when it suited her. I started packing. I didn't take much. My clothes, my computer equipment, some books, and a few things that had sentimental value. Everything else could stay. I wasn't running away. I was making a strategic retreat. By 6 o'clock, I was checked into a hotel across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and quiet, and it was mine. I ordered room service and settled in to plan my next move. Zoya would be back from Vermont in 3 days. When she walked into that apartment, she'd find divorce papers on the kitchen table, half the money gone from their joint accounts, and no trace of her husband. She'd also find that the premium cable package had been canceled, the utilities were now solely her responsibility, and her perfect Instagram life was about to become a lot more complicated. I opened my laptop and started researching private investigators. If Zoya wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I knew all the rules. Zoya came home on December 27th, and I knew exactly when she walked into the apartment because my phone started ringing 30 seconds later. I was sitting in a coffee shop across town, working on a client project and waiting for the fireworks to begin. I'd spent the last 3 days preparing for this moment, and I wanted to savor every second of it. The first call went to voicemail. So did the second, third, and fourth. By the fifth call, I was actually impressed by her persistence. Finally, I answered. "Hello, Zoya. Where the hell are you?" Her voice was shaky, somewhere between rage and panic. "I'm working. Why? Why?" "Because I just got home and you're not here and there are legal papers on the kitchen table and half our money is gone." "Oh, that. Yeah, I moved out while you were playing house with Kai. How was Vermont, by the way?" "Soren, what have you done?" I took a sip of my coffee and watched the snow falling outside the window. "I did exactly what you suggested. I thought about whether our marriage was working for me, and I decided it wasn't." "This is insane. You can't just what? Can't just take you at your word when you tell me our marriage might not be working? Can't just protect my assets when you make it clear you'd rather be with another man?" "I never said I wanted a divorce." "You didn't have to. You said maybe our marriage wasn't working. I agreed with you." There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, less certain. "Where are you staying?" "Why?" "Because we need to talk. We need to figure this out." "Figure what out, Zoya? You made your choice. You chose Kai over me. You chose a romantic Christmas getaway over your marriage. What exactly is there to figure out?" "It wasn't romantic. It was just what? Just you spending Christmas with your ex-boyfriend while telling your husband he could get divorced if he didn't like it?" Another pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, and I wondered what she was thinking. Was she realizing how badly she'd miscalculated? Was she starting to understand that her ultimatum had backfired? "Soren, please. Can we just meet somewhere and talk about this like adults?" "We did talk about it like adults. 3 days ago. You told me what you wanted and I listened. Now you have it." "That's not what I wanted." "Then you should have been more careful with your words." I hung up and turned off my phone. Let her sit with that for a while. 2 hours later, I was back in my hotel room when someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw Lyra standing in the hallway, looking amused. "How did you find me?" I asked as I let her in. "I called every hotel within 10 miles until I found one with a Soren Valden registered. You're not exactly hiding." "I'm not hiding at all. I just don't want to deal with Zoya's dramatics." Lyra looked around the hotel room and nodded approvingly. "Smart move. She's losing her mind right now." "Good." "She called me crying, asking if I knew where you were. When I said no, she accused me of taking your side." "Are you taking my side?" "Absolutely. This is the most entertainment I've had since my own divorce." Lyra sat down in the room's single chair and crossed her legs. "She wants me to convince you to come home and talk to her. And I told her that maybe she should have thought about that before she decided to spend Christmas with her ex-boyfriend." I found myself liking Lyra more and more. "What did she say to that?" "She said it wasn't like that Kai was just a friend, that you were overreacting. So I asked her how she'd feel if you spent Christmas with your ex-girlfriend." "What was her answer?" "She said that was different because you don't have an ex-girlfriend you're still close to." "Convenient logic." That's what I told her. I also told her that if she wanted to save her marriage, she should probably start by apologizing instead of trying to justify what she did. And she said she had nothing to apologize for because she didn't actually cheat on you." I stared at Lyra. "She said that?" "Word for word. According to Zoya, since she didn't sleep with Kai, you have no right to be upset." "Wow." "Yeah. That's when I realized that she really doesn't get it. She thinks this is about jealousy, not about respect." Lyra was right. Zoya still didn't understand what she'd done wrong. In her mind, she was the victim of her husband's unreasonable jealousy, not the architect of her marriage's destruction. "Has she talked to Kai since she got back?" "Oh yeah. He's been very supportive, telling her that you're obviously not the right man for her, that she deserves someone who understands her needs." "Of course he has. He's also been posting pictures of their Vermont trip on social media, very cozy pictures." That got my attention. What kind of pictures? Lyra pulled out her phone and showed me Kai's Instagram account. There were dozens of photos from the past few days. Kai and Zoya by a fireplace, Kai and Zoya on a ski slope, Kai and Zoya at a romantic-looking restaurant. In every single photo, they looked like a couple. A happy, romantic couple, enjoying a perfect Christmas getaway. These are public? I asked. Completely public. And they're tagged with the location and everything. I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Zoya had spent the last few days playing house with her ex-boyfriend, documenting every moment and posting it for the world to see, while she was married, while her husband was at home. Lyra, can you do me a favor? Sure. Can you screenshot all of these and send them to me? Planning to use them in the divorce? Maybe. Or maybe I just want to make sure I have a complete record of my wife's Christmas vacation with another man. Lyra grinned and started taking screenshots. You know what I like about you, Soren? You're methodical. Zoya always goes for the dramatic gesture, but you're playing a longer game. I'm not playing anything. I'm just documenting reality. Same thing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Kai. We need to talk. I showed the message to Lyra, who laughed out loud. Oh, this should be good. What are you going to say? Nothing. Let him wonder. But Kai wasn't content to be ignored. Over the next hour, he sent a dozen more texts. I know you're getting these messages. Zoya is upset, and it's your fault. You need to stop being childish and talk to your wife. She made a mistake, but you're making it worse. If you were any kind of man, you'd fight for your marriage. Instead, you're hiding like a coward. No wonder she came to me for comfort. At least I know how to treat a woman right. You never deserved her anyway. She's better off without you. I showed the messages to Lyra, whose expression got darker with each one. What an ass, she said when she finished reading. He's actually trying to provoke you into doing something stupid. Probably hoping I'll threaten him or something equally dumb. Are you going to respond? I thought about it for a moment, then typed a single message. Thanks for taking her off my hands. You saved me a lot of trouble. Kai's response came back immediately. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Let him figure it out. That was perfect, Lyra said. Short, dismissive, and it makes him wonder what you're really thinking. I'm thinking that Kai and Zoya deserve each other. They really do. They're both selfish, dramatic, and convinced that the world revolves around them. My phone rang. It was Zoya again. Are you going to answer it? Lyra asked. Not yet. Let her sweat a little longer. But Zoya was nothing if not persistent. She called 6 more times over the next hour, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Soren, please call me back. We need to talk about this. I know you're angry, but this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear. Kai told me he texted you. Whatever he said, just ignore him. This is between us. Your lawyer called. We need to discuss the terms of this divorce if you're really going through with it. I talked to Lyra and she said you're being stubborn. This isn't like you. Fine. If you want to throw away 5 years of marriage over a misunderstanding, that's your choice. But don't blame me when you regret it. The last voicemail was different, angrier, more desperate. You know what, Soren? Maybe you're right. Maybe our marriage isn't working. Maybe I do deserve someone who understands me better than you ever did. Kai thinks I should just let you go ahead with this divorce, and maybe he's right. Maybe we're both better off without each other. I played that last message for Lyra, who shook her head. She's trying to make you jealous. She wants you to think she's moving on with Kai so you'll panic and try to win her back. Is that what you think she's doing? I think she's terrified that you actually meant what you said, and she's trying every manipulation tactic she knows to get you back under control. And if I don't take the bait? Then she's going to escalate. Zoya doesn't know how to lose gracefully. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Zoya had posted a new photo, A selfie of her and Kai at a restaurant with the caption, "Sometimes the best way to heal a broken heart is to remember what real love feels like." New beginnings, grateful, moving on. She posted that 20 minutes ago, Lyra said, looking at her own phone, and it already has 30 comments. I looked at the comments. Most of them were from Zoya's friends, offering support and asking what had happened. But a few were more pointed. "Wait, aren't you married? Is that the same guy from your Christmas photos? What happened to Soren?" Zoya hadn't responded to any of the questions about her marriage. She was letting people draw their own conclusions, which made her look like the victim of a failed relationship rather than the architect of its destruction. "She's trying to control the narrative," I said. "Of course she is. That's what Zoya always does when she gets caught doing something wrong. She flips the script and makes herself the victim. Not this time." I opened my own Instagram account, which I rarely used, and crafted a single post. When someone gives you an ultimatum, they're not trying to save your relationship. They're trying to end it with you as the bad guy. Sometimes the best response is to simply say, "Okay," and walk away. Lessons learned, moving forward. Grateful. I posted it without any photos, just the text. Within minutes, it had likes and comments from friends who knew both me and Zoya. "Dude, what happened? Are you and Zoya okay? This sounds serious." I didn't respond to any of the comments. I just let the post sit there, a quiet counter-narrative to Zoya's dramatic declarations. "That was brilliant," Lyra said. "You didn't say anything specific, but anyone who knows you both will be able to read between the lines." I'm just telling my side of the story, without actually telling it. Much more effective than Zoya's approach. My phone rang again. This time it was Alara. "Soren, I just saw Zoya's Instagram post. And yours. What's happening?" "Your sister is trying to rewrite history, and I'm making sure people know there's another side to the story. She's been calling me all day, trying to get me to convince you to come home. And I told her that maybe she should have thought about the consequences before she gave you an ultimatum. How did that go over?" "About as well as you'd expect. She accused me of never supporting her, of always taking everyone else's side, of being jealous of her happiness." "Are you jealous of her happiness?" Alara laughed. "Soren, my sister is sitting in an apartment that's about to become too expensive for her to afford alone, posting pictures with a guy who's already texting other women behind her back and pretending that her marriage ended because her husband was unreasonable. Does that sound like happiness to you? Kai's texting other women?" According to his ex-girlfriend, who's a friend of a friend, apparently he never stopped playing the field, even while he was pursuing Zoya. That was interesting. Does Zoya know? Not yet. But she will eventually. Kai's not exactly subtle about these things. I thought about that. Zoya had blown up her marriage for a man who was already looking for his next conquest. The irony was almost perfect. "Alara, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think Zoya actually loves Kai, or does she just love the idea of being with him?" "I think Zoya loves the idea of being desired. Kai represents excitement, passion, all the things she thinks are missing from her life. But love? I don't think Zoya knows what love actually looks like." "What do you mean?" "I mean that love is what you were giving her for 5 years. Loyalty, support, partnership. But Zoya confuses love with drama. She thinks that if a relationship isn't constantly intense and emotional, then it must not be real. So she traded a real relationship for a dramatic one." "Exactly. And now she's going to learn the difference." After I hung up with Alara, I sat in my hotel room thinking about the last few days. A week ago, I'd been a married man planning a quiet Christmas with my wife. Now I was single, living in a hotel, and watching my ex-wife parade her new relationship on social media. It should have been devastating. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't walking on eggshells around someone else's moods. I wasn't trying to anticipate what would make Zoya happy or upset. I wasn't managing someone else's emotions at the expense of my own. I was just me. My phone buzzed with one more text from Zoya. "I'm coming to find you. We're going to settle this face to face." I showed the message to Lyra, who was still sitting in my hotel room. "She's bluffing," Lyra said. "She has no idea where you are. Even if she finds me, what's she going to do? Demand that I take her back? Probably. Zoya's used to getting her way through sheer force of will. Well, she's about to learn that some things can't be fixed with dramatics." I turned off my phone and settled in for the night. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a permanent place to live. I'd meet with my lawyer to finalize the divorce proceedings. I'd begin building a new life that didn't revolve around managing someone else's chaos. But tonight, I was just going to enjoy the quiet. I woke up the next morning to someone pounding on my hotel room door. "Soren, I know you're in there. Open the door." Zoya. Somehow, she'd tracked me down. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing in the hallway, still in last night's clothes, looking like she'd been up all night. Kai was with her, looking uncomfortable and probably regretting whatever series of decisions had led him to this moment. "Soren!" she yelled again. "We need to talk!" I could hear other hotel guests opening their doors, curious about the commotion. A security guard was walking down the hallway, looking annoyed. I opened the door just wide enough to stick my head out. "Zoya, you need to leave. You're disturbing other guests." "I'm not leaving until we talk." The security guard approached us. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to lower your voice. We've had complaints." "This is my husband," Zoya said, pointing at me like I was evidence in a trial. "He's hiding from me." "Sir," the guard said to me, "is this woman bothering you?" I looked at Zoya, who was staring at me with a mixture of desperation and fury. Then I looked at Kai, who was clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Yes," I said, "she is." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the property." "You can't make me leave. This is a public place." "Actually, ma'am, this is private property and you're trespassing. You can either leave voluntarily or I can call the police." Zoya looked back and forth between me and the security guard, and I could see her calculating her options. Finally, she turned back to me. "Fine, but this isn't over, Soren. You can't hide from me forever." "I'm not hiding, Zoya. I'm just done talking to you." "You owe me a conversation." "I don't owe you anything. You made your choice, and I made mine." The security guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to leave now." Zoya looked like she wanted to argue, but Kai put his hand on her arm. "Come on," he said. "This isn't working." As they walked away, I heard Zoya say, "I can't believe he's being so stubborn. This isn't like him at all." And that was the problem, wasn't it? Zoya was so used to me being accommodating, so used to me backing down from confrontation, that she couldn't process the fact that I'd finally drawn a line in the sand. I closed the door and called the front desk to let them know I might need to change rooms. Then I called Margaret Raleigh. "Soren, good morning. I was just about to call you." "Why?" "Because your wife's attorney contacted me yesterday. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "The divorce is straightforward. No kids, minimal shared assets." That's what I told them. But apparently your wife has some concerns about the terms. "What kind of concerns?" "She wants spousal support." I almost laughed out loud. "Spousal support? She makes more money than I do." That's what I told her attorney. But she's claiming that she gave up career opportunities to support your marriage. "What career opportunities? She's a PR executive. She's never given up anything for our marriage." "I know that, and you know that, but she's going to try to make the case that she's entitled to compensation for the lifestyle she's losing." The lifestyle she chose to lose when she decided to spend Christmas with her ex-boyfriend. Exactly, which is why I think we should counter-offer with the evidence we've gathered about her relationship with Mr. Dornell. Margaret was right. If Zoya wanted to play hardball, we could play hardball. What kind of counteroffer? No spousal support, a clean split of assets, and if she contests any of it, we introduce evidence of her extramarital relationship. Is what she did with Kai considered an extramarital relationship legally? In New York, adultery is defined as intercourse with someone other than your spouse, but emotional affairs, inappropriate relationships, and abandonment of marital duties can all be relevant to divorce proceedings. And spending Christmas with your ex-boyfriend while giving your husband an ultimatum counts as abandonment of marital duties. I think a judge would see it that way, yes. I thought about Zoya's Instagram posts, about the photos Lyra had shown me, about the text messages from Kai. Let's do it. Are you sure? Once we take this approach, there's no going back to an amicable divorce. Margaret, there was never going to be an amicable divorce. Zoya just proved that by showing up at my hotel with her boyfriend to harass me. Fair point. I'll draft the counteroffer today. After I hung up with Margaret, I decided it was time to find a more permanent living situation. I spent the morning looking at apartments, and by noon, I'd found a furnished one-bedroom place that I could move into immediately. It was smaller than the apartment I'd shared with Zoya, but it was mine. No shared lease, no shared utilities, no shared anything. Just a clean, quiet space where I could rebuild my life. I was signing the lease when my phone rang. It was Eddie. Dude, what the hell is going on? Zoya just called me looking for you. She called you? She said you were having some kind of breakdown and she was worried about you. She wanted to know if I knew where you were staying. What did you tell her? I told her that if you wanted her to know where you were, you'd tell her yourself. Then I asked her how Vermont was. How did that go over? About as well as you'd expect. She hung up on me. I finished signing the lease and walked outside. It was a clear, cold day, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe properly. Eddie, want to help me move into my new apartment? You found a place already? Just signed the lease. It's furnished, so I don't need much. Just my clothes and computer stuff. Hell yes. This is like watching you get paroled. We spent the afternoon moving my belongings from the hotel to my new apartment. It didn't take long. I'd been living light since I left Zoya's place. As we were finishing up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is pathetic. You're acting like a child. Let me guess, Eddie said, reading over my shoulder. Kai? Probably. Another text came in. Zoya deserves better than this. Then another. You're destroying your marriage over nothing. And another, she's crying because of you. I showed the messages to Eddie, who shook his head. This guy really doesn't know when to quit, does he? He's trying to provoke me into saying something stupid. Are you going to respond? I thought about it for a moment, then typed, If she's crying, maybe you should comfort her. You seem to be good at that. Kai's response was immediate. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I blocked his number. That was cold, Eddie said, grinning. That was factual. He wanted to be the other man in my wife's life, and now he gets to deal with the consequences. My phone rang. It was Lyra. Soren, I just got off the phone with Zoya. She's losing her mind. Why? Because you're not reacting the way she expected. She thought you'd either cave and beg her to come back, or you'd get angry and make yourself look like the bad guy. Instead, you're just moving on. Is that a problem? For her, it is. Zoya's whole identity is built around being the center of attention. The fact that you're not fighting for her is making her question everything. Good. She's also starting to realize that Kai might not be the prize she thought he was. What do you mean? I mean that when you're actually spending time with someone 24/7, instead of just having romantic getaways, you start to see their flaws. Kai is charming for a weekend, but apparently he's exhausting as a full-time companion. I thought about that. Are they living together now? Sort of. He's been staying at her place since they got back from Vermont, but she's already complaining that he's messy, that he doesn't help with anything, that he expects her to cook and clean for him. The honeymoon period is over already? Apparently. Turns out that when you're not the forbidden fruit anymore, you're just fruit. How poetic. Zoya's starting to realize that she traded a partner for a project. You were low maintenance. You had your own life, your own interests, your own income. Kai is high maintenance. He needs constant attention, constant validation, constant entertainment. Sounds exhausting. It is. And expensive. Guess who's been paying for all their meals and activities? Zoya. Bingo. Kai's one of those guys who's always between projects or waiting for a big deal to come through. He talks a good game, but his bank account tells a different story. I was starting to see the bigger picture. Zoya had traded a stable, respectful marriage for a dramatic, expensive relationship with a man who saw her as a meal ticket. How long do you think it'll last? I asked. Not long. Zoya's not stupid, just selfish. Once she realizes that Kai is using her, she'll probably try to come crawling back to you. That's not going to happen. I know. That's what makes this so entertaining. After I hung up with Lyra, I sat in my new apartment and looked around. It was quiet, clean, and peaceful. No drama, no ultimatums, no walking on eggshells around someone else's moods. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be. My phone buzzed with one last text from Zoya. I hope you're happy. You've gotten exactly what you wanted. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, You're absolutely right. Thank you. She didn't respond. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new apartment, working on a freelance project, when Margaret called with news. Zoya signed the papers, she said without preamble. All of them? All of them. No spousal support, clean split of assets, and she agreed not to contest any of the terms. What changed her mind? I think reality set in. Her lawyer probably explained that fighting this divorce would cost more than she'd ever recover, especially with the evidence we had about her relationship with Mr. Dornell. So it's over? It's over. You'll be officially divorced in 30 days. I hung up and sat back in my chair, waiting to feel something. Relief, sadness, regret. Instead, I just felt calm. My phone buzzed with a text from Alara. Heard the news from Lyra. Congratulations on your freedom. Thanks. How's Zoya handling it? Not well. Kai moved out yesterday. That was fast. What happened? She found out he was texting other women. Apparently, he never stopped looking for his next conquest, even while he was in love with her. How did she find out? He left his phone unlocked and she saw the messages. There were a lot of them. I thought about that. Zoya had destroyed her marriage for a man who'd been cheating on her before they were even officially together. Is she okay? She's embarrassed, angry, and probably regretting every decision she's made in the last month. But she's too proud to admit it. Has she said anything about the divorce? Just that you were vindictive and petty for not fighting for her. I laughed out loud. Even now, even after everything, Zoya couldn't accept responsibility for her own choices. In her mind, I was the villain for taking her at her word. Tell her I said congratulations on her new beginning. Are you being sarcastic? Not at all. She got exactly what she wanted. Freedom from our marriage and a chance to be with Kai. The fact that it didn't work out the way she planned isn't my problem. You're a better man than she deserved, Soren. I'm just a man who finally learned to value himself. That evening, Eddie came over to help me celebrate my impending freedom. So what's next? He asked as we sat on my couch, drinking beer and watching the game. What do you mean? I mean, you're about to be officially single for the first time in 6 years. What are you going to do with your newfound freedom? I thought about that. For so long, my life had been structured around Zoya's needs, Zoya's schedule, Zoya's moods. Now I could do whatever I wanted. I think I'm going to take some time to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to keep someone else happy. That's very zen of you. I'm serious. I spent 5 years walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate what would make Zoya happy or upset. I forgot what it was like to just exist, without constantly managing someone else's emotions. And now? Now I can just be myself. No compromises, no negotiations, no ultimatums. Eddie raised his beer. To being yourself. To being free. We clinked bottles, and I meant it. For the first time in years, I was truly free. Free from drama, free from manipulation, free from the exhausting work of trying to love someone who saw love as a transaction. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. This is Zoya. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. You were right about everything, and I was wrong. I hope you can forgive me someday. I stared at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Eddie. Wow, he said. That's actually a real apology. Too little, too late. Are you going to respond? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to ignore the message, to let Zoya sit with her regret. But another part of me, the part that had loved her for 5 years, wanted to acknowledge her apology. Finally, I typed, I forgive you, Zoya. I hope you find what you're really looking for. Her response came immediately. I already had it. I was just too stupid to realize it. I didn't respond to that. There was nothing left to say. That was classy, Eddie said. It was honest. I do forgive her. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want her back. Think she'll try to get you back? Probably, but it won't work. I'm not the same person I was a month ago. How so? I thought about how to explain it. A month ago, I would have done anything to save my marriage, even if it meant sacrificing my self-respect. I would have accepted Zoya's ultimatum, let her spend Christmas with Kai, and pretended it was okay. And now? Now I know that some things are more important than keeping the peace. Some lines can't be uncrossed, and some disrespect can't be forgiven. Even if she really is sorry? Being sorry doesn't undo the damage. Zoya showed me exactly how little she valued our marriage when she gave me that ultimatum. Even if she regrets it now, I can't unknow what I learned about her character. Eddie nodded. Once you see someone clearly, you can't unsee them. Exactly. We finished our beers in comfortable silence, watching the game and enjoying the peace of my drama-free apartment. No ultimatums, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Just quiet, simple freedom. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, in my own apartment, with no one to answer to but myself. I made coffee the way I liked it, ate breakfast when I was hungry, and worked on projects that interested me. It was, I realized, exactly the life I'd been trying to build with Zoya, except now I was building it for myself. My phone rang around noon. It was Lyra. Soren, I have news. Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective. Zoya's moving back in with our parents. Why? Because she can't afford the apartment on her own, and she's too embarrassed to ask for help. She's going to spin it as taking time to figure out her next steps, but really she's broken alone. That's unfortunate. Is it, though? She made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Lyra was right. Zoya had gambled her marriage, her financial security, and her independence on a relationship with a man who'd never been serious about her. She'd lost everything, and it was entirely her own doing. How is she handling it? About as well as you'd expect. She's angry at Kai for lying to her, angry at herself for believing him, and angry at you for not fighting for her. Still my fault, somehow. Always. Zoya's never met a problem she couldn't blame on someone else. What about you and Alara? Are you supporting her through this? We're being sisters. We're not being enablers. There's a difference. I liked that distinction. Meaning? Meaning we'll help her move. We'll listen when she needs to talk, and we'll be there for her emotionally. But we're not going to pretend that what happened to her was anyone's fault, but her own. That seems fair. Alara actually wants to have coffee with you sometime. She says you're the first person Zoya ever dated who she actually respected. I'd like that. After I hung up with Lyra, I realized something had shifted. A month ago, the news of Zoya's troubles would have made me feel guilty, like maybe I should have tried harder to save our marriage. Now I just felt neutral. Zoya's problems were no longer my problems. Her choices were no longer my responsibility. Her happiness was no longer my job. For the first time in years, I was free to focus on my own life, my own goals, my own happiness. And that felt pretty good. My phone buzzed with one final text from Zoya. I know you'll probably never want to see me again, but I want you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away for nothing. I'm sorry. I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late, and some mistakes can't be undone. But some endings, I was learning, are actually beginnings in disguise. I closed my phone, made myself lunch, and started planning the rest of my life. A life that would be built on my own terms, with my own values, and without ultimatums. It was going to be a good life.